Hello, everyone. Most of you will probably know me, but I'm Andy Woodhead, and just as a catch up, you probably know me because I've got vascular dementia. I've had it for just over a decade now, and I've watched it slowly get worse. Although it is something that I've been able to, um, I think, slow down myself without. Um, uh, Specific dementia medication, but blood pressure medication is really important if you've got vascular dementia. And I'm diabetic, so it's important that I keep things on an even keel as far as my diet is concerned, exercise and remaining social. But the big changes have really been my mobility rather than cognitive impairment, although cognitive impairment is um, something that I do battle with, and I notice it more when I'm tired, but I search for words. And very often I don't want to talk, which is very difficult for my relationship. My partner, Bernard, would like to talk about the things that a couple and a family should talk about, and I'm really sort of saying it's not a good time to talk about these things now, and it's very difficult for him to find a good time with me. Um, when we can talk about it. So there are relationship issues, and they're not his fault, they're mine. Depression is becoming a real battle, and agitation. Those are the things that I notice myself. Bernard notices a lot more things, and so does my son, um, about me that are changing. And of course, a lot of the damage that I have is frontal part of the brain. So the sort of the social filters and the ability to plan are definitely impaired. Definitely the social filters, because I think because I can relax with family, I can be more honest. And by being honest, I'm being brutal sometimes.
Mm.
And I don't know. I come out with things. I don't. I'm not violent in any way. Never have been. I don't think that's something that will develop. Um, I, I never swore, but I do now.
Mm.
When I really lose it, and that's difficult on a relationship. It's very, very difficult, and sometimes it's very difficult for them to do right for doing wrong because there's a very fine line, and I think I've probably elaborated on this one before. If not with finding the light, then certainly in conferences, there's a very fine line between caring for somebody and their welfare and their safety and controlling them.
Mm.
And I think it's very difficult for us to realize the difference, um, because of my kickbacks against being told I can't, for example, climb a ladder or I can't do certain jobs outside anymore. I've ended up in hospital. So, you know, what I saw as control really was caring, and it was caring that I needed. It's great, isn't it? I can say all this now, but then when it happens, all of that logic goes out of the window. This is your you're seeing and labeling me by the dementia, and I'm still me. That's something which sticks in my mind. I'm still me, which is pertinent.
Mm.
And it is still the same. And whatever stage I'm at, I am still me. However, I'm a different me. And I think I have to accept that I will change. Um, and it might be easier for me to accept than for those that are closest to me because they're seeing it more objectively than it would be possible for me to do. So I think that's been a big change.
Okay, thanks for that, Andy. Your insights are incredible for us to try and understand more. And I think what you're saying is sometimes your judgments aren't as good as they were, and that's where your family are trying to keep you safe, aren't they, as
They
well?
are.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's hard sometimes for you to appreciate that, and but you reflect amazingly on it all, actually.
Yeah.
Can I ask, can I go back though? I think when we first met, I understood, I thought you had a diagnosis of Lewy body
I
dementia.
did.
Has that changed then,
It
or
ha
have you
it
both?
has. Yeah. I think um, my diagnosis was very early. It probably would
Yeah.
have come 5 or 6 years before anybody else's because I had none of what was then considered the classic symptoms of dementia.
Mm.
We now know more about dementia, and it's not what we assumed as being just about memory loss.
No, not good.
It's about a lot more than that. It's about a person's change in personality, vocabulary, mood changes, and these sorts of things. I only went for medical review because I have a tremor.
Mm.
And I'd lost my sense of taste and smell. And this is a classic sign. I could see it in my GP's face. I'll never forget that day. The look of fear in his face. And I went into Morriston Hospital, into what used to be their neurological ward. It was called Gowers. And I was in there for over a week, actually, having tests for Parkinson's disease. And because I was having hallucinations as well, which I still do, they
Mm.
don't scare me, I have to say. I know a lot of other people struggle with those hallucinations, particularly people with Lewy body. For example, black spaces or holes in the
Yeah.
ground, etc. I see that, and I can still rationalize that particular one. But because of the way that it's developed, the diagnosis has changed. The MRIs are showing lesions,
Yeah.
but they're where I have had a TIA, a transient ischemic attack.
Mm.
Um, Fortunately, um, the area of the brain responsible for memory seems to be one of the least affected. Probably the worst affected areas are the front and also the area responsible for your motor skills
Yeah.
and judging distances, etc., which is really why most people with dementia have to give up driving. It's not, people think it's because they lose their way because they can't remember.
No.
It's not. It's because you lose your ability to judge distances, speed, etc. But I got a good news, bad news story. It was good news. You don't have Parkinson's disease. Bad news is you have dementia. We think because of the symptoms that you're now displaying without the cognitive impairment and the shake that you have Lewy body dementia, which is, oh, I'd say statistically more often than any other
And we
confused
are finding that
for
more, aren't we?
Parkinson's. Yeah,
Andy, I know we talked about your diagnosis before and how shocking it was. Do you mind if we, I don't want to, disregard that at all, but, when you were talking about the motor skills, if we're thinking about, say, for instance, we wanted to advise architects and people that
yeah,
design spaces, what sort of advice would you give them when they're thinking about designing, we have these terms, dementia-friendly spaces?
yeah.
Any advice that you could offer?
Oh, loads now. Basically, through experience, through my lived experience
Mm,
and the problems that I've had, but I have um, been given the opportunity to go into hospitals and advise them on specific issues to make the hospital environment more dementia friendly. I think it's very difficult when you're modifying an environment than when
yeah.
you're fortunate enough to be an architect that can design a new one. And the same with hotels,
Mm,
hotel spaces. We forget about those types of spaces and the fact that people, would want to come from their room maybe down to the bar, but follow their partner down a little bit later on rather than having
mm,
to telephone them and say, "Can you come and get me? Because I can't find my way," or whatever. Um, so I think architects have got a an opportunity,
mhm,
um, and even in redesign as well. I mean, we mustn't give up on the redesign because not everything is going to be built from scratch. Things are going to need to be improved. And the first one, and I'll refer to some notes that I've
yeah,
taken.
that's great.
One of the most important is floors, believe it or not.
Hmm.
Um, and uh, black floors are a no-no. Black mats coming into any building are a no-no because a lot of people with dementia will see that as a hole in the ground, and there is no way, even if you stand and jump up and down on it for them to see you doing it, you would convince them that it was any different. And they will become extremely agitated, and many of them just won't come in. I know with a doormat you could roll it up so that they could walk over the top of it, but most hotels take a dim view of you doing that. And anyway, why should you? It's a very simple and inexpensive thing to do. And I noticed that most shops now, hotels and hospitals don't have the old black doormats that for rain that they used to have, and carpet. You have to be very careful with carpet, not too much pattern,
Yeah.
um, and also again not grey necessarily, but some colour
Mm. We need
is.
we need a bit of contrast, don't we? But the pattern affects somebody's ability to process that
Yeah.
visually, isn't it? It's too much to process.
Yeah.
So it's
Now,
very,
when I go into, for example, spaces that are rather dated and they've got patterned carpet,
mm,
unfortunately for me, they're snakes. They can be, and I'm absolutely terrified of snakes. Um, so you have to think about things like that. And pattern is lovely. I mean, I love color.
yes.
Pattern is lovely, but squares and triangles and things like that, rather than flowers and leaves, that could be misjudged as other things. And of course, I suppose the most important thing about the floor is tripping hazards.
Mm,
So it's steps that aren't clearly demarcated.
yeah.
And if you can avoid steps at all, particularly the worst steps, believe it or not, aren't the high ones. They're the low steps
Yes.
because you don't even see them coming. And before you know it, you're flat on your face because, there was a 2 inch level that needed to be equalized, whereas it would have been much better to design a slope or to alter it so that it would become a slope rather than a small step. Um, Color extends to the walls as well. Grey and white, unfortunately, sort of blend into the background. Um, so even if it's just feature walls and things like that, I think if you can add some color, which again costs nothing, and this applies specifically to hospitals, and I know this is something that Velindre Hospital in Cardiff have worked very hard on. It's not expensive to change a colour, although the NHS used to buy all of its paint in bulk,
Yeah,
so it was always the same
lime green
colour.
or something, wasn't it, years ago?
Yes,
Uh,
that's right.
thinking about colour, Andy, do you know what colours are best? There's a lot of
Um,
debate out there, isn't there?
yeah,
So you
there's a
aware?
lot of debate about colour, particularly in terms of signage.
Mm,
Black and white, not necessarily a good one. Um, It's very difficult because I was going to say it's a subjective issue, which it is, but it also depends on what type of dementia you've got as well. So for architects, it's a bit of a problem, and I think it's finding the one that's perhaps um, statistically the most beneficial. And I think warm, homely colours
mm.
are the ones that mean the most. And pictures on the wall. It, a clinical environment is an intimidating environment. If you can just soften it, I call it softening an area, then it can make a significant difference. And as I say, a little colour makes a huge difference. Unfortunately, those blue disposable curtains that we now have around hospital beds, they're not the most dementia friendly things to have. But again, it's something the NHS in particular buy in bulk. But you've got a lot of freedom in hotel rooms to make them look, and you would want them to look comfortable and inviting. But I would say whatever space you're designing, make it look welcoming, make it look relaxed.
So we're thinking, Andy, a lot about a sense, a feeling, aren't we? That sensing.
Yes.
So that, we know that some places can have atmospheres and can sense to be quite intimidating. So what you're talking about, as well as the sort of physical design, it's the sense of the place,
Yes,
isn't it? And that's
it is.
something that can be, I suppose that's around furnishings as well, and colour.
Yeah,
Can I ask you as well about light? Because obviously, we know that dementia can affect a person's ability to see, how they
yeah.
see, what they see. What are your thoughts around
Um,
it?
Light is a very important issue. Um, and again, um, people like ambient lighting rather than bright overhead fluorescent tube lighting. However, in a hospital, one of the most important things when you're treating someone is that you've got good light to be able to see what you're doing. And the same applies because we've looked and talked to people that design ambulances because the Wales Ambulance Service are redesigning their vehicles. So we've talked about things like the seating. Does it have to be black? You
Mm.
know, no, it doesn't. So, changing the colours of the furniture. And Public Health Wales have got a huge space in their headquarters in Cardiff, and I call it it's like a little BBC, the new BBC studio, where they've got lots of little discussion spaces that are different colours. So, fortunately for people with dementia, that's the trend. And I think if you have to have an open space, don't um, try and develop some enclosed areas where you can have what needn't necessarily be confidential conversations, but can feel a bit more relaxed. So, don't just have office chairs. It's nice to have sofa seating. And again, the Senedd, for example, have done that in their public areas, and it makes a difference. You've got a little gathering space that makes you feel comfortable and invites conversation.
Yeah.
So I think you need to think about the furnishings in terms of what do you want to encourage? Do you want it to be a waiting room where everyone sits and says nothing and doesn't even look at one another? Or do you want it to be somewhere where people will engage? Maybe you want both, but I feel even if it's a waiting room, again, pictures and color, etc., are important. And we're probably on the good side of this one because it's dare I say, fashionable
Yes.
to for interior designers and architects to make spaces that look like that now. And we talked about signage, and yellow on blue has become popular as a dementia-friendly way of providing signage. Arrows that go like this rather than like that or like that mean very little to somebody with dementia. You don't.
You can't work out what that means, can
Yeah,
you?
that's
Exactly.
right. So you need to think about little things
Mm.
like that. And hospital signage is the worst. Um, I have to say, whenever I go to Morriston, which is huge, I always get lost, and the signage doesn't help at all.
What would help there, do you think, Andy? What would
Well,
help with that
one, the
experience?
size of the signage, because it's always extremely small,
Yeah.
and a colour. Because again, they're stuck with the old signage in many, many places. Um, and I think the typeface that you use for the signage as well is something that we forget about. It's like the typeface for a document that you got to read. Now, I'm an Arial fan really because it's what I used all my working life. So it's not necessarily the one that I would recommend, but it's the one that I like.
It is one
It's
of
the
the
one that I
cons, though,
like
isn't
because
it?
it's the one that
Yeah.
I'm used to. Yes, italics don't work.
Oh
People
no, no, not
think,
at
oh,
all.
italics look beautiful, but they're very, very difficult to interpret, particularly in late stage dementia. And before you get to your clinic, because you've got lost, you're agitated
Oh, of
before you
course.
even get there. So it doesn't help the whole experience. And the same in a hotel. I'm lingering a lot on hospitals simply because I spend so much time in them.
Mm.
However, in hotels again, signage is important. I think you need to think as well about how doors open. Do they open in or out, or do they go both ways? Because um, the last thing that we seem to read and shouldn't is pull or push, which is on the
I
door.
muddle them up a lot, actually,
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So therein lies a problem, and um, because we're talking about doors, I'll move into corridors. I think corridors need to be as wide as you can possibly design them. I know that they're narrowed specifically so that you can get more space for particular rooms or wards, etc. But I think corridors need to be widened. And that's because more and more people are now using these facilities. And if you're say in a hospital, hotel, or at home, you're moving things around, or you've got a walking aid, you need that additional space. So that's another thing to talk about. But the one that I notice at Public Health Wales, when we inspected the building for a conference that they're holding later in the year on dementia with the health authorities and other third sector organisations and anyone that wishes to come, is that they've got floor to ceiling glass windows.
Oh,
Um,
oh,
exactly.
that's just
Which are architecturally
beautiful.
beautiful from outside,
Mm,
and also they bring the inside,
yes,
the outside
yeah.
in, which is what
Mm.
they're designed to do.
They can
However,
be very
yeah,
disorientating, can't they?
what we've had to do is say, please, on every window, because it's 90% of them are floor to ceiling, to maximize the light that
Light,
comes
yeah,
in. Yeah. That will stick posters actually on the glass because you'll walk straight into the glass. You can
yeah,
guarantee,
yeah.
and it's the same with doors, glass doors. If someone, patio doors in houses, if someone has got dementia, they will walk into it because you can't tell whether it's open or closed, regardless of whether you've got dementia
Well,
or
I have a visual, I don't see very well, particularly when the light has gone. So
yeah,
I'm noticing this
yeah,
myself as well. And I know I found when the light is dimmer, I can't see as well.
yeah.
And yes, the glass. Can I
I,
ask you as
I've seen some very jazzy ways of dealing with that, and that's striping,
mm,
putting stripes across the window. These things that you can stick on to the
yeah,
glass, which an interior designer chooses to match the decor.
yeah,
But it's a safety feature,
yeah.
if you like. It's a disguised safety feature, and it's a very important one.
Mm,
Uh, I mean, sticking things to the windows isn't the ideal because from outside it looks awful,
yeah.
but it's the best thing you can do sometimes
And
with something that you're stuck with.
yes.
So, windows get forgotten. Um,
Can
you
I
know,
ask Andy as well? I think one of the most important things I know from what I've been hearing as well, and I very value what you say here, is about acoustics and
yeah.
sound. How do you find when you go into, these big spaces, do you struggle to, hear, or are you struggling to be able to communicate because
Yeah.
of the
Well,
acoustic?
earlier you mentioned lighting.
Hmm.
So we've covered that. And again, subdued lighting is always better, but accept that some spaces you can't have it. Um, and I think acoustics similarly, unless it's a venue where you're going to hold orchestral, events. I think somewhere where the acoustics don't echo, and because we can't internalize. If there's someone talking over there and I'm having a conversation with you here, I can't help but, you know,
Your attention.
tune into that as
Yeah.
well. And then everything just becomes confused.
Mm.
So I think and echoes are important. And people drop trays all the time onto hard floors, and you will see someone with dementia, they'll jump
Yeah,
yards.
that your
Uh,
attention is affected, isn't it?
yeah,
Often, and something that we often don't explore more is attention, whether that's visual attention or, and that's all about how we can filter out all of that extraneous, whether it's
yeah.
noise or what we see, to be able to focus.
We've looked at that particularly with the ambulances that I mentioned earlier. How can we reduce the noise, particularly the doors slamming, you
Mm. Oh, I've
know.
experienced that with my
Yeah.
mum actually when she had dementia.
So,
Yeah.
it's getting doors that close automatically rather than having to slam the doors.
Yeah, that sudden noise is
Yeah.
very
Um,
distressing. Yeah.
Yeah, so you've got to pay attention, I think, to being able to reduce background noise as much as possible. And as I say, unless you're designing a venue that's specifically for performing arts or that sort of thing. But even then, they pay particular attention to acoustics. I know that the Royal Albert Hall struggled for years, and obviously that was designed in mid-Victorian times.
Mm.
They struggled with acoustics for their orchestral events. And the only reason I know that now they've got these mushrooms that hang from the ceiling,
Yeah. It
and
breaks up the sound, doesn't it?
and
Yeah.
it was my brother-in-law that put those in back in the 80s
Oh, wow.
to that they're not particularly pleasing to the eye, but in terms of the sound, because the Albert Hall had an echo and it did affect performance, and that particular design, and they're plastic mushrooms, large,
Yeah.
absorb the sound
Mm.
and remove the ability for the sound to go up to the ceiling and echo back down to the ground again. So it made a significant improvement. And that was a modification to acoustics, not something that you could design in because it's a grade one listed building.
Yes, exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
but it shows that it can be. That's the only reason I can remember it was because it was my brother-in-law that did the design and his Welsh company that actually put uh, the new design for the acoustics in place. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you, Andy. Gosh, that's so insightful. And I'm sure a lot of architects at the conference are going to find this really helpful. There's so
Yeah.
much to think about, and it's so important. Of course, it's very difficult, isn't it? The whole idea of universal design,
Yeah.
is there such a thing? Because everybody has different needs. But certainly, I think your insights will really help them in considering, particularly looking at light, looking at materials, looking at acoustics.
Yeah, if I was to sort of summarize it, I would say where it's at all possible, soften a space. I appreciate that architects have to design things that are easy to clean
Mhm.
when you're talking about public spaces,
Yeah,
but there are subtle ways, if you like, of softening a public area. And I think, just be a little bit more adaptive and creative, which I know they already are. Um,
mm,
and fashion is on our side, as I say, interior design. So I think softening any space, whether it's a home that you're designing, a retail establishment, or a hospital, or a school, even a
yeah,
school,
yeah,
because
absolutely.
children. I mean, there's nowhere more echoey than a school when children are running up and down the stairs
And
to
we
class.
know that people who have neurodiversity, such as autism,
Exactly,
will have the same issues actually,
exactly.
won't they?
Yeah,
So we need to make sure those spaces are calmer,
yeah.
quieter.
Which is why I say. Um, we talk about dementia friendly areas. However, I think they're mental health friendly areas, hidden disability friendly areas. I like to think now I speak for patient-centered care rather than just dementia
Yeah, yeah.
because, everybody's equally deserving of uh, the same sort of consideration, but they're not mutually exclusive. So if you're designing a dementia-friendly area, it's also autistic friendly, or if someone's got another mental health condition,
Yeah.
I think it takes that into account as well. So, I think that is probably the only thing that makes it easier for the architects. They haven't got to think about each different individual condition.
Yes,
They've
yes.
just got to think about making somewhere feel um, welcoming and safe. Yeah.
Well, safe, yes, very important. And
My sort of mantra really, safe. And I think I told you how that came about. Lecturing nurses at Cardiff University. One of the third year nurses asked me to describe in one word, um, what mattered to me when I was in hospital, whether it's an outpatient's clinic or a ward or A&E. And could I describe it in one word? And I said that would take me months to think about. Next speaker came on, and then, well, while they were talking, it suddenly dawned on me. Um, what it was. I can describe it in one word. And then I came out and said, safe. Can I
Mhm.
just refer back to that very, very intelligent and good question?
Mm.
And it's feeling safe in that environment. And I think, the general public want to feel safe. We live in difficult times, not necessarily ones that I'd like to list, but we do live in difficult times, and I think we all want to feel safe in whatever environment that might be.
Thank you, Andy. That's absolutely beautiful and so articulately put.